Huh. It's not
Okay,
showing. Is it live for you?
Yes, we're live.
Yay.
All
There we
right.
go. Now I
Hello,
can see it.
everyone.
Welcome, everybody. We'll get started and let's give people a minute or so to join.
Sounds good. Maybe like if people are joining, can do like a one-word check-in. Let us know how you're doing.
Yeah. Hi, Kirti. Hi, Jaya.
Hi, Jaya. It looks like we're live in LinkedIn, right?
Oh, yeah, she says it is now. It took a while for mine to pop up,
Yeah,
too.
it did take a little bit of time for it to populate. All right, so let's get started. Neha, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Welcome. We are so excited to welcome you to our now second informal discussion for Asian American women. What did we call this one? The Power of Play. Asian American women rediscovering their inner child. We're so delighted to have you all here. There's just so many topics to discuss. Jeena and I have a whole list, and it's so hard for us to decide on which one, but this one really spoke to us today. So we're excited to talk to you all about that. And we really hope that this isn't just a two-way conversation between us and you all. We want to hear from you. This is a community we're trying to build. So please drop some comments if something resonates with you or doesn't resonate with you and why. Share your experiences. As you'll hear, Jeena and I have different identities and different life experiences. So what has fed our play and sometimes limited our play, those are different forces for us. And they're probably going to be different forces for you as well. And so we want to really hear your experience and perspective as well. So thank you in advance for participating in the chat. My name is Neha Sampat. I am CEO of Belong Lab. We help organizations create cultures of belonging into which each person can bring more of their true and best self. So we do all sorts of programs, really linked to authenticity, confidence building, bias busting, both in externalized bias and internalized bias, which if you're an Asian American woman might resonate with you through experience. It certainly does with me as well. And I think my identities, oh my goodness. Let me start with, I'm the daughter of immigrants from India. Grew up in the Midwest in what was then a pretty white town. So my othering really shaped a lot of who I am and what I do in my work. I also have a non-apparent disability. I have chronic migraine that impacts me all the time, every day. So that's something I wrangle with. I'm a mother of 2 children and a reluctant business owner. So there you go. Jeena,
Thank you.
tell them about you.
Hi, everyone. I am Jeena Cho. I am a former lawyer. I won't say recovering lawyer because I actually really legit love the practice of law. But now I teach mindfulness and meditation in law firms and lawyers. So my sort of mission in life is to help lawyers embrace mindfulness, well-being, and personal growth. I'm the co-author of the best-selling book, The Anxious Lawyer, an 8-week guide to a more joyful and satisfying law practice through mindfulness and meditation. So if you're looking to have a more joyful and satisfying law practice, go check out my book. And let's see, I am an immigrant. So I immigrated from Korea. So I self-identify as a Korean American. I am also a mom to a 4-year-old and have a multiracial daughter. So my husband is European white American. So she also has many, many different identities. So we're kind of collectively navigating what that means. Yeah, I think I'll pause there.
Awesome. So, Jeena, you want to tell them about the form that you posted?
Yes.
And then we'll dive right in.
Neha and I are created a little form, and we would love it if you're interested in more topics for and by Asian American women. Please complete the short form. I'll pop it back into the chat. So I just posted it into our LinkedIn chat. And yeah, so please complete the form, and we'll let you know when we do other events.
Let's get to the fun part. Let's get to the play. So Jeena, and I guess this isn't just a question for you and for me, but a question for everyone joining us today. So feel free, folks, to answer in the chat as well. How how do you define play? I'm curious. Like, what is play for you?
So play for me is something that I do just sheerly for the pleasure of it. So there's no purpose, there's no there. It's just something that I do just because I love the act of it. So kind of getting out of that perfectionist doing mode and really practicing more being and also, there is a sense of like delight and
Mm.
joy and surprise that go along with play, sort of this unexpected. Yeah. So, like, I have a 4-year-old, so I feel like I'm constantly playing, and she is truly, truly the best teacher that I could have ever hoped for teaching me to reconnect with play. So, yeah. How about you, Neha? How do you define play? What is play
Um,
for you?
you know what's interesting is that when we decided to do this topic, I really struggled. I realized how little I think about play. I
Mm,
realized how um, I hadn't really contemplated it in a way that I think it's really important to, given that I feel like I've lived a life that could have had more play, and thankfully I am now. Trying to think about how do I allow space for it. I almost wanted to say make, but I realized that for me, play is more about allowing. Like it's not
mm,
something to actively put effort towards. To me, it's almost like the absence of effort. It's
yeah.
something that is in which I don't even know. Like when I thought about absence of effort, I'm like, how do I do that? I'm like, no, the whole point is not to
You need to
do.
turn off your lawyer brain.
Totally. But I'm
You
so
can't approach
conditioned.
play with like the lawyer
I'm
brain.
like, how do I do the play? Like on my to-do list, they'll be like rest, play, which I think is an important place to start. But that to me isn't the pure play. Like play truly is like ease. I think of play as ease. I think of it as I agree with how you defined it. That resonates with me. The enjoyment, the delight, the surprise I had never thought about. And I love that. It's this idea that to me it feels like true freedom. Play is just like freedom to explore, to stumble upon something not so pleasant sometimes, and to stumble upon something pleasant sometimes, but to be open to that stumbling. And I think for me, really, I'm connecting with this idea of enjoyment just for the sake of enjoyment,
Mm,
and how do you do that? And that's something that I think some people are like, why even ask that question? But for me, um, it is a question that needs to be asked. How do you enjoy just for the sake of enjoyment without an agenda? Like you were kind of saying purpose. So that's how I would define it. How how has play changed for you? Like, let's talk about our identities. Let's talk about our life experiences. Like what was play? Did you play as a child? How did that change? Do you feel like you played enough? I'd love to hear about your experience as a child because I think it's different than mine in some ways.
yeah. Um, what you just shared a little bit ago about how you're sort of reconnecting or rediscovering play, that totally resonates with me. I think if you would have asked me even a couple of years ago and said, what do you do for play? Is like play something that you embody? I would have just kind of looked at you like, what are you talking about? Because it was never something that was important in our family. And in fact, I think my parents were so focused on survival,
Yeah.
right? And I think when you're in that survival state and you're constantly in that fight or flight, where you're truly like fighting for your survival, I think absence of play is a natural byproduct of that. So recently in therapy, I sort of realized the fact that at the age of 10, when we immigrated to the United States, like not only was play taken away from me, but also my childhood was taken away from me. And that was also when I was introduced to labor. Like we came over and both of my parents did very, very hard, manual labor jobs. And I would go to work with them. And so, and in fact, I think my parents would be like, there's no time to play. Like you need to work, even as a 10-year-old. And, I really fully embodied that. Like I, fully embodied hard work. And that was sort of my compass for, probably 30 years of my life. And now, when I sort of stumbled on that sort of like violent loss of childhood and that loss of play, I went through like a whole grieving process just for that 10-year-old self. So now, the question is like, what does re-embodying that 10-year-old self look like, and what does she want to do for fun? And obviously I am no longer 10 years old, so what does that look like to embody play as now a 45-year-old woman and a mother? And interestingly, when I was talking to the therapist and we're kind of exploring, I realized that when for my daughter, I just summarily rejected any schools that was like, we get your child kindergarten ready. We're very academically focused. Like all of those were just immediately crossed out. And I thought, and now, she actually goes to an outdoor play-based daycare and she plays like all day long. That is her job. It's just to play. So, I clearly value that for my daughter, and it wasn't like a conscious thing that I thought about, but how I don't value that for myself. So now I'm having to really reclaim, I think just both the sadness of losing that part of myself, but then also it's like I get to discover a whole new aspect of myself that, that I've completely lost connection with.
Wow. I found it really reassuring personally to hear about how you've shaped your daughter's experience in a way that prioritizes play, because I don't think I've given myself and my husband enough credit for doing that too. I've been so hyper focused on how this is just so meta. It's like I fail at playing. There should be no failure when it comes to discussing play. There is no failure. But I was thinking about how we've crafted their lives as we can. They're their own people, but we've created their environments in a way that supports play, and very similar to what you've done for your child. I mean, we moved to a town that was really diverse, that wasn't, that we specifically felt like wasn't going to put academic pressure on our kids.
Mm,
They do different activities. They quit activities, which I remember being told growing up, like, you're never supposed to quit. You just keep working hard. And thankfully I've learned the value of quitting. Like I should have quit a lot of things a lot earlier. That would have left me room for play and enjoyment instead of just like pushing, which is how I feel like I've spent a lot of my life, is just trying to push and against this really heavy weight. But with our kids, yeah, like sometimes I'll find myself confronted by families who have a different, I don't know, philosophy, I would say. And a lot of them are like Indian American, like us, and they're just a lot more intense, I would say. And their kids have a lot more intense experience. It's like traveling sports team, this activity, that activity, doing homework in the car on the way, and just it feels so overwhelming to me. And if my kids actually enjoyed that, I'd be like, awesome, but that's not what brings my kids joy. And that's not what brings me and my husband joy. But I find myself, when confronted by those, like starting to feel like, oh my gosh, should we be putting our kids in more activities? So it's a constant call for awareness, self-awareness for us, and to really think about, we don't have to do this the way I feel like both my husband and my parents raised us. In fact, we want it to be different. We don't want our kids to have the pressure that we were under, and that may change their future opportunities, which sucks because our culture sucks in a lot of ways. But are they going to enjoy their childhoods? Are they going to learn how to enjoy and to prioritize enjoyment? I really hope so.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate that kind of window into how do we change things generationally as we move forward. Um, it's interesting. When I think about how my childhood in play, I actually don't have a lot of the answers because, like I said, I realized I hadn't really contemplated this enough, which is a statement in itself. But I think about, like, I played sports. Like, I probably know the rules to almost any sport there is. I played all sorts of sports. I was terrible at sports, terrible. And I remember being so hyper conscious of how bad I was and feeling like it was my goal to be better. And I wasn't like, that's just not my skill set. It's not my skill set. Um, and I was so focused on being better that I was that conscious of how bad I was. And
Mm,
therein, the enjoyment leaked out of the experience. And
yeah.
yet I kept doing it. I asked myself, I'm like, my gosh, how long did I play soccer? Being like the crappy soccer player on the sidelines and
Mm,
feeling crappy about it. I played for a long time. And I think to myself, I think that was part of, I don't know if it was identity based, like, Indian cultures influence, Indian American cultures influence. I definitely think there's the immigrant legacy for me in that, and specifically the Asian American immigrant legacy, because that's what I can speak to, because that's my
mm,
experience, which was, you come to this country, you get here by busting your ass.
mhm.
And then you come here and you have to bust your ass
Yep.
because that's what you know to do. And also, if you don't, you will not succeed because the system is set up to screw you because you're not white, cisgender, straight male. And so the pressures our parents were under were real. The pressures to actually overperform in the very little room they probably had to play, there was a reason for that. Unfortunately, I think that as we've kind of, there is more opportunity for us to play. I think we've sometimes failed to grasp those opportunities because the message I learned, probably not intentionally on my parents' part, was like, it's work. It's about accomplishing. And if you happen to have, I don't even think there was discussion of if you happen to have fun along the way. But I kind of saw as if I happen to have fun along the way, added bonus, like
Mm,
unexpected
mhm,
bonus. But
mhm.
it wasn't about centering enjoyment. And I
Yeah.
think that's what kept me in jobs that were not the best for me for way too long. I think that's what kept me from realizing that I deserve better. I
Mm,
know that in my work now, I say to people, you've worked too hard and you've come too far to not enjoy your work and your life. And
mm,
see that, it's just like this like shock moment
mm,
because I think so many of us have forgotten that we deserve to enjoy our work and our lives. And I think I was that person for a long time. But thankfully, I've started to, um, you know, embrace play. It's hard for me, I'll be honest, with my current disability issue and the chronic illness I have. I think that's what robs me of my play now. But I
mm,
will say this. I think that starting my business is a way that I have rediscovered and reconnected with my inner child because I do the work I enjoy doing. And not always, but oftentimes it doesn't feel like work. And
mm,
it is play. It
mhm,
is play. And
mhm.
so that's one way that I have, reclaimed it that I can really hold on to.
Yeah. And I think like one inquiry that I've been just sitting with is that question of like, okay, like how can I infuse a little bit of playfulness into this, right? Like whatever the thing is, whether it's making dinner or doing the dishes or, doing the like, it's just like anything that you do actually can have that spirit of playfulness. So like re-embodying that. And then the other thing that's coming to mind is the connection between play or playfulness and nature. I also
Mm,
feel like I've been, like a lot of us, right, that live in pretty urban centers, we are, often like detached from nature. And just the more time that I spend in nature, just, under the sun and, like the stars and the moon and just like allowing nature to hold me, that's just so like deeply healing now I just go down, like we live pretty close to the American River. And I just go down there and I just sort of like allow myself to wander. Like I'm not going for a walk, I'm not going for a jog, right? I'm just like allowing my curiosity to lead me. And, sometimes I'll just stand there and like look at a tree for a while. And sometimes I'll just sit. And I did get like a little sketchbook. So now my next thing is I want to just start like doodling in nature. But yeah, like I'm curious if you also have some connection or sense of like how nature plays into that sense of
Yeah.
play or playfulness.
Yeah, I am. Yes, it definitely does. And I also want to say, I really appreciate kind of going back to your connection between play and playfulness. I find that really illuminating because playfulness can be just laughing, allowing yourself to laugh in a moment that you may have habituated yourself not to laugh. Like I was thinking about my talking about my therapy journey. You were sharing a little bit of yours, but I was remembering how one of my therapists was talking about in conversations with people that are really, fraught, difficult conversations, people whom you love, like, how do you bring laughter into that? How do you actually like reinfuse that with laughter and playfulness? Like sometimes we can communicate more effectively when we approach things in a playful way than in a really serious way. And so I was thinking about that. And then when you brought up the nature part of it, I have this thing I do, not always. I used to be really religious about it and do it every day. And I'd love to kind of return to that, allowing myself to do that. But it's still so magical when I do it. I step up in the morning, I come downstairs, and at some point, like usually after the kids have left, when it's a little more peaceful, I step outside the front door with usually no shoes on so I can feel the bricks beneath my feet on the front porch. And I just have, I guess, what you'd call a mindful moment, but I
Mm-hmm.
connect with the different senses. So I literally like look at the leaves in the trees. I look yonder at the hills. I smell nature. I hear the sounds of the different birds. I'll maybe connect with a squirrel on the branch right next to me. And it's like that word you said, delight, really, really is how is really the word that bridges between me and nature in a way that creates play. This idea that nature's constantly showing us, is delighting us. It's constantly showing us how to play. It's constantly showing us like the leaves and the branches dancing in the wind, like the sounds of the birds singing. Play is there. And so for me, nature reminds me of that. And I think also there's just this animal part, I'm animal. And so when I'm in nature and I connect with nature, that is play to me. Like that actually is a real important part of play for me. And one of the most beautiful things about that is it's literally right outside the door. So this isn't something we have to like, I'd love to go be like, Jeena, let's meet for a hike halfway between us. But it doesn't have to be that. It can literally be walking out into my backyard, taking my flip flops off, feeling the grass. And
Yeah.
that can be play for 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that in the middle of the day. I'll just go outside, take my shoes off, and just do a little, it could be like a minute of walking meditation practice. And I think like all the things that you described, like connecting with your senses, reconnecting with nature, like that's also resourcing. I mean, like that is an amazing resourcing of yourself. So, like you're like literally just like feeding your soul and like, giving yourself those resources. So I absolutely love that. Um,
I have a question.
yes.
This is not something we talked about talking about. I'm wondering for myself and you and for everybody, like, what are the forces at work that keep us from play? And I think there are different forces for us as Asian American women than there would be if we were like white cisgender straight men having this conversation, which I can't imagine white cisgender straight men having this conversation in a lot of ways, because I think probably play is something they're allowed to take for granted in a lot of ways. Not all of them, but certainly that's the way our culture is. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the obstacles that may keep us from engaging with our inner child and playing, and how do we have awareness around those and still don't let those hold us back?
Yeah. I think this is probably true for everyone, not just for Asian women, but I think capitalism, like I
Oh
feel like
yeah,
capitalism just
that's a biggie.
is literally like the system that deprives everyone of play,
Yeah,
like it deprives them of their connection to themselves. And, it's just this like machinery that just keeps churning for people to be more productive, to squeeze an extra point one an
yeah,
hour, and I think that just naturally deprives people of play. And then, of course, as Asian American women, there's all of the other things, right? Like, we have the model minority myth, and we
mhm.
have to be perfect, and we have to work twice as hard to get, half the distance, and like all of those things. How about you?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think capitalism for me is probably the worst force, and I think the impacts of capitalism are different on different subpopulations, and certainly as Asian American women, like you mentioned, the expectations of perfection. I think there's also stereotypes of us being more serious. Like,
Mm,
I'm thinking about like Margaret Cho and like some of like the Asian comedians, like how that was so for me such a breath of fresh air to
mm,
see Asian Americans being allowed to laugh and leading in laughter. And I don't feel like that. I feel like that was very subversive to stereotypes of us, and it continues to be subversive to stereotypes of us. We're expected to be very quiet. I'm a loud laugher. When people see me out
docile.
in public laughing loudly, they're like, "What the f?" Right? And so I think some of it is like constantly, allowing ourselves to be boisterous and to laugh loudly and to redefine what it means to be an Asian American woman for ourselves and for society around us. But I do think that stereotypes, can limit us in a lot of ways, and what's expected of us. Put your heads down, work hard. That's what Asian people do, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Um, but it's so delightful for me to see people like you, for so many people that I know who I know. And if I don't know you, I want to know you in this community, this sub community today, who are people who kind of push against those limits, because every single one of us creating room for play and normalizing it normalizes it and creates space for the rest of us to do that. And so I'd love to ask a question to everybody. Can you put in the comments, what do you do to incorporate play in your adult life? How do you do that? What do you do? I know Jaya was saying about hobbies, mentioned hobbies. So if we can crowdsource some ideas, I think I certainly would find that beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also I almost feel like it's not even so much about like the thing that you do, it's almost like an embodiment of that's really where
Yeah.
I want to get to. It's like just, like somebody who really embodies play and playfulness. And I feel like I'm definitely like really, kind of long ways to go. But and also it's funny is that after I like rediscovered this lost part of myself, I had this like I was putting so much pressure on myself to like play, and then it
Yeah.
became not enjoyable.
Oh my
So I was
gosh.
approaching play with the same perfectionist tendencies.
Yes.
And I thought, oh no, this doesn't work for me. And I actually had to realize like, oh, I actually need to like slow this way, 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 way down. Like just go slow, like just and that's enough. Like it doesn't have, and actually I feel like when you slow down it naturally just creates more opportunity for play, right? Because you're not like
Yeah.
and I notice that with my daughter all the time. Like sometimes I'm just in that like we gotta do the mode, and then then it's not fun for anyone.
Yeah.
But if
So
there's
true.
just if we're able to just slow down, like even like doing the dishes, like it can,
Yeah.
so like even the chores, like I try to make it like a more fun and like play and playful experience, because like chores was like such a like my parents like approached it like with like military precision.
I can so relate to that. Oh my gosh.
And that actually had led me to like hate doing household chores. And now
Yeah.
I'm sort of
Yeah.
like, okay, like can I find a little bit of delight in folding the laundry? Can I find a little bit of delight in just the everyday things that I do? Can I find delight in washing my hair? Just there's like delight to be had all the time. We actually need to just be like we need to slow it down so we can
Yeah.
experience it and feel it and see it.
Oh my gosh. You just gave me my big takeaway for today. Actually, you gave me two big takeaways. You gave me more than two big takeaways, but the two because I don't want to be overly ambitious. I just want to pick what I can, actually manifest and accomplish. This idea of slowing down, I think there's so much wisdom in that I haven't, that there's room for me to explore. So I really, really appreciate that, Jeena. And that's something I think that's going to help me find more room for play. And I think the other thing about the chores, because I have totally experienced that it's like, even the things that are done for enjoyment, forget about chores that are typically not supposed to be enjoyable, but the things that are supposed to be enjoyable got the enjoyment sucked right out of them because they became something I had to move towards being perfect at. It was all about doing and getting better instead of just being and enjoying.
Yeah.
And so I think there is something there that I'm going to experiment with the chores. And so thank you for that. Curious about, and I also wanted to say the other takeaway that I think came from me and you, because I heard this word used coming out of my mouth and your mouth multiple times, and it was allow, allow,
Mm-hmm.
allow. And it really connects with this, what you were saying about, I want to embody it. And I feel like, Jeena, it's there, right? Like we're human beings. Like it's part of us. It's just that we have had to cut off our connection with that part of us. And how do we actually like rediscover that part of us? And I love that about, maybe it has to be effortful at first, but the idea is eventually we reconnect with that fully and it's just who we are. And so I'm really inspired by that. What is your takeaway before we log off? And everybody attending, please share if there's a takeaway you heard from one of us, if there's something that popped into your head or you saw in someone else's comment, what's one takeaway from our conversation that's meaningful to you?
Yeah.
Jeena,
My takeaway is like how, it doesn't need to take a lot of time or effort or money or anything. Like, I love your example of just stepping out, literally like opening up your front door and just taking a moment to allow nature to hold you and to resource yourself. I think that's such a like little like micro practice that we can put in. Like just right outside of my office window, there's this beautiful magnolia tree, and sometimes I'll just like look at the tree and watch the sunlight as it like bounces off the leaves. And actually, it actually feels like the sunlight is like playing with the tree almost, it's just like dancing and like bouncing, and you can see the lights reflecting in every which way. And, sometimes the light comes in different angles. And I think there's a sense of playfulness in that, just like what you were saying, like play and playfulness is everywhere, in nature, it's all around us.
It's so true. And you're really inspiring me because I think I'm committing to right after. I'm not even committing. I'm just excited to right after this conversation ends, go outside and like allow myself to connect with something like that. So thank you so much for that. Of course, we filled way more than the time we had allotted. So I want to see your takeaways here. And if you end up doing something that feels like play later today, come back and share it with us because that helps all of us remind ourselves to allow ourselves to play. Jeena, you want to revisit the whole workshop thing we're planning on doing? In case folks missed the beginning? The form?
Oh, sorry.
Jeena's already playing. She's already moved into
if you want more goodness like this, join in more conversation, please fill out this little form and putting the link in the chat so that we can have more conversations like this.
All right, thank you all so much. Jeena, your upcoming program.
Yes. So I am, I just closed it. Let me pull it back up. I'm going to put the chat to my new upcoming workshop. I'm offering an 8-session class on, it's titled Discover Inner Calm and Focus so you can be a better human and a better lawyer. So I'm also going to put that information in the chat as well.
I love your programs, Jeena. You've really helped me connect with myself and you've helped me live a better life. So I really appreciate you and your work. I'm trying to think of what I'd like to share. I think in the context of this conversation, I'd love to share a program that we put on called Lessons to Unlearn. how being good gets in the way of being great. And I think when we think about play, a lot of it to me is an unconditioning versus a conditioning towards play. It's an unconditioning of seriousness, of intensity, of effort, effort, effort. It's kind of unlearning some of those lessons many of us had to learn to get to a certain place in our lives, to then allow ourselves to get to an even better place in our lives. So that's a program. If you're interested in bringing that to your organization, definitely reach out to us. Stay connected with us. If you don't know each of us on LinkedIn, connect with us on LinkedIn. Please join our community by filling out that form that Jeena shared. We'd love to do more of these talks. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful and playful day.
Hi, everyone.